Hello, everyone. Lainey. Hi, Lainey. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are
Grace.
you? I'm ready for an out of this world presentation. We're gonna
Oh,
have it.
Gonna blow your
Grace.
socks off today.
Um, yes, Lainey, Grace, and I are very excited to talk with all of you today about some really cool upcoming books and some cool programming that we just want to make you aware of. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Galley Gab Test. Stop texting me. Crowdcast is working. Woohoo! All right. Um, Galley Gab Fest, here we are. It's a beautiful day, and we're going to talk about a few things before we get to David Pomerico, who is going to be speaking with us about sci-fi fantasy titles. But quickly, we just want you to know about writers to watch. So if you don't know about writers to watch, where have you been? But hopefully you do know about writers to watch. And once a month, Grace, Lainey, and I sit down and we speak with 3 to 4 authors about their forthcoming book. We do it at 7 o'clock at night so people can, have some time to get home from work, have a bite to eat, pour a glass of wine, and listen to these authors. And last Wednesday, March 6th, we had Lucy Foley, Kate Quinn, David Nichols, and Rufi Thorpe on, and it was amazing. There are thousands of views now on Facebook. We do this on Library Love Fest Facebook page. It's Facebook Live, but we're also be doing it on Crowdcast again. We were having some connectivity issues, which apparently we no longer have. So things seem to be working. So we encourage you to go back and watch this. Lainey, you said you put the link in for people to check it out?
Yep, it's in the chat.
It's in the chat. So check it out. It's quite fun. We really encourage the authors to speak with each other, and then we just sit back and watch the sparks fly in a good way. It's very fun. And speaking of, we have another Writers to Watch coming up in April.
I need a drum roll. Thank you. Super exciting.
So exciting. Look at this. Kirsten Miller, Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books, such a great book. Speaking to all the issues in a novel form, and it's really wonderful. And Willie Vlotton, we are huge Willie Vlotton fans here at Library Love Fest, and his new book is coming out called The Horse. And Ian Smith has got his mystery series with Eagle Rock. Is his next one. And then Pung Shepherd, All This and More. You all know Pung Shepherd. We've had her on. She's amazing. So that's April 17th. So Lainey or Grace, you want to talk about how folks can find out about this?
Yeah, the event for the link where you can RSVP will be up on Facebook shortly in the next day or two. So you'll be able to check that out, RSVP. It'll be a very fun time. I already see some love coming in the chat. Jennifer Winberry said Willie Vlotton, heart eyes, heart face emoji.
Yeah, that's how we all feel. Yes.
Yeah, he's wonderful. We're big fans of all these authors. Anyway, just looking forward to it. So please check it out. And now we're going to have a little bit of information at the end of this program about PLA. We have PLA coming up, and so we have lots to discuss. So I'll let you know who's coming to PLA. Anyway, without further ado, David Pomerico, we would love you to turn your camera on.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Going okay.
Nice.
I love our backgrounds. Virtual books, real books, an office, and a cottage in Ireland.
I love how the office is the one that doesn't have any books.
I know.
Our publishing office doesn't.
That's a good point.
It does look like a doctor's office, yeah.
I'm actually sitting in an office here at HarperCollins, but it's like a telephone room, and this book, which you can't see, but it's Wally Lamb's. I love this book.
You just disappeared.
I know.
Cool.
It's actually one of his. Here was this book. I can't tell. Oh, May 13th. That'd be right. It's We Are Water by Wally Lamb. It's a wonderful book. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Wally Lamb as much as we love him. We're here to talk to David Pomerico. Hi, David. Thanks for taking the time to come and talk to us today.
No, it's my pleasure.
So, David, I'm going to do a little bio on you, and then we're going to ask you to talk about some upcoming books from Voyager and William Morrow. So David Pomerico is VP Editorial Director of Harper Voyager and Executive Editor at William Morrow. He's celebrating his 10th year at HarperCollins. Before that, he was at Amazon and Penguin Random House, and all in, he's got 17 years under his belt in book publishing. And he is the editor of books by authors such as R. Huang, Shannon Chakraborty, Janelle Monáe, Becky Chambers, Sue Lynn Tan. You all know these authors. And David is the person who has shown the light on these authors. So right now he's going to talk about some upcoming sci-fi fantasy titles coming from Voyager and William Morrow. David, did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to say about yourself before we dive into books?
No, I just honestly just thanks to all the librarians out there who have been I love going to my local library and seeing Voyager titles on the shelves, and it's just really gratifying because I know that's where a lot of sci-fi and fantasy readers are finding their books. So it's just this is really important to me to be able to talk to you guys.
Yeah, discoverability. I mean, it's as you say, it's a great place for learning about new books you didn't know were even there. I think what you should do really is just take an armful of Voyager books and go to the library, take off the ones that are on the shelves, and just put all the Voyager books on the shelves. It's just an idea.
I'm down. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, let's do that. All right, enough silliness. So let's talk about some of your books. Grace has gotten all the jackets together. They're gorgeous. So take it away, David.
So this is the one this is actually coming out next week. This is The Weavers of Alamaxa. You might have read The Daughters of Izdahar, which is the first book in the Alamaxa duology. These are by Hadir Elsbey. They are Egyptian-inspired secondary world fantasies. They're very political. They definitely play well with an LGBTQ audience. And essentially, it's about the women in this city trying to affect change. And they form a group called the Daughters of Izdahar, who are basically trying to do it the right way, do it through the political means, but often the patriarchy gets in the way, as it so often does. And so what they do is try and have agency. And part of the way they do that is through magic. In this world, weaving is how magic is affected. It is very elemental, so you're either an earth weaver or a wind weaver. And the two main characters come from very different backgrounds. One is a very privileged young woman who was part of an arranged marriage. The other is a very poor young woman who is in love with the person that the arranged marriage was with. And they're actually really kind of chill about that because the woman who did get married is actually not cis. She finds love with another weaver, another woman. And if the first book is really about a lot of that political machinations about discovering that power, this book is about exerting that power and actually showcasing that power. It's a lot more, there's an outside element that is also threatening the city. So this one's a lot more action oriented, a lot more magic. It's really fun, and it concludes the duology. I love Hadir. I love these books, and I really hope if you're a fan of P. Jelly Clark or Shannon Chakraborty, this series is right there for you. And I hope you can find it and pick it up.
That's great. We've got people who are watching online saying how much Nikki Nesting said how much she loves this book, and Jennifer Winberry saying she loves The Women and the Weavers.
Great. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So then some more a new name for Voyager is the next slide, which should be Karen Matharu and Dragon Rider. Now, you might know Dragon Rider. I'm sorry, you might know Taran Matharu. He's a New York Times bestselling author of some YA books, particularly the Summoner series. This is his first foray into adult fantasy. It's got dragons, which we all know readers are really into right now. Kind of spoiler alert, the dragon's a little small in this one. So he's not actually riding the dragon just yet, but he will be. It's a trilogy, so we're getting started. But this is about a young man who was basically hostaged to a rival empire, to protect his people. He escapes with a dragon egg. He starts raising that dragon, and he starts coming into the power that comes from being connected to a dragon. He's trying to get back to his people. He's trying to prevent the empire that he escaped from, which actually just goes through a coup itself and is even more vicious and rapacious, to be able to, protect his people and create that independence that he so richly desires and he thinks his people deserve. To me, this is like, it's funny, but this is a very kind of guy fantasy in the best possible way. Like, in the same way, like somebody like R.A. Salvatore or Raymond Feist, or even like a Brandon Sanderson, like play a little bit more in that male space. Evan Winters, I think, is another great comp author for this book. That's not to say that I don't think like female or non-binary readers won't enjoy this. I just feel like there are moments when I think there are readers who like just want that like kind of traditional guy adventure, and I think this fits that a little bit more than some of our other books, which I think are also good for guys and girls and non-binary readers. But we don't do a lot of books like this, so that's why I point it out, because I do think that's a kind of important aspect to the story. I will also point out that this is in the tradition of a cultivation fantasy. Now, that's really, really popular in the self-pubbed and indie world. It's part of that lit RPG subgenre that you might be familiar with, but in cultivation novels, it's really about powering up. It's about leveling up, and often, like, the character has to go through like visceral physical changes. We kind of tone that down a little bit because I'll admit it's not always for everybody. It's like literally messy. Like the character has to like cleanse themselves of their impurities. In this one, it's not as, I think, overt, which I feel will make it more palatable to lay fantasy readers and the cultivation readers. But I don't think there's a lot out there especially from a traditional publisher in this space. You you might be familiar with authors like Will White or Dakota Kraut, who gave great blurbs towards this. But again, like they're not really necessarily in this kind of more commercial space. So I think that balance is something that we're really excited to showcase from Taran as well.
I just have one comment about Dragon Rider from the chat. Christy Chadwick said, it was our dear friend, said, Dragon Rider had some good twist. So that's a lovely shout out in the chat.
Yes, and I'm already working on book 2. So again, like that should be out next spring as well.
Excellent.
All right. Then I believe we are going to talk about The Amethyst Kingdom by A.K. Mulford. So this is the 5th and final book in the 5 Crowns of Oakrith series. This was originally self-published. This is one of 2 that had never been released before. So the Evergreen Air before this was an original to Harper Voyager, and this will be also an original. This is romantasy in the best possible way. I know it's a buzzword, but it's still a useful buzzword. These books have spice in a really good way. They have incredible LGBTQ representation. this one is a kind of lovers to enemies to lovers story, where the protagonist and the love interest like had been in love. He betrayed her. Now they're kind of thrust back together to, save the world because it's a fantasy. And they work their way through the lies and the misconceptions and the trust issues to find a way to work together and to ultimately be together. It does have a happily ever after. It does resolve the broader arc of the first 4 books, which is really cool. And this is a world where there are humans, there are fae, and there are witches. And the fae are at the top, the witches are kind of in the middle, and the humans are at the bottom. And in this book, the witches, and in the series, the witches are really trying to get to the top. And it's up to a lot of fae, like basically a lot of couples, and the couples are all over the place. Some are fae and human, some are fae and witch, some are witch and fae. It's up to them to try and sort it out and be like the younger generation that ushers this world into a new era. I think AK Mulford, they are amazing. They are an incredible TikTok presence. We also have the Golden Court series that started with A River of Golden Bones that came out last summer. We have the second book in that series coming out in December. They're just super prolific. They write really fun, really sexy books. Each book in this series does stand alone, although they do add up to a larger story. And one of the reasons I really enjoyed this one is it's about a competition. It is a competition to see who will become king or queen of this kingdom, of this court. And so part of the fun is that the protagonist and her love interest, like they're both vying for the same thing, and they get paired up in part of the competition. So you can see why, even if they do find love, they're still rivals to each other. So there's always that kind of fun tension and a lot of adventure, a lot of like kind of questy, good fantasy stuff that just, I think, makes it a good fantasy and a good romantasy.
Glad you mentioned A River of Golden Bones, because I loved that read, and I put it on Bookmark by Lainey, this book recommendation website I have, and I had an interview. I had typed questions to AK Mulford, so I'm gonna put it in the chat so everybody can go read those later. But that was
Awesome.
I loved that read. I'm excited for the next one.
We also have a great question in the chat from Jennifer Winberry. She said, what are the challenges in editing a book that has previously been self-published? Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it really depends on lots of times what the author wants, and also what we want as a publisher. So sometimes we want speed to market. We want to take advantage of the momentum. So for the first 3 books, this author already had worked with an editor. So what we did is we did put it through a quick copy edit. We did put it through a proofread just to clean it up, make sure that like some of those things that like when you're indie published, you might not have access to the repetitive resources that we put a book through. And then for me, the challenge when I was working on, say, like the Evergreen Air was I had to make sure that I had read all 3 of the other books, really knew who those characters were, knew where the arc was going, know the world pretty well, because like I had to know the magic system in a book where people might already assume I knew the magic system. So, and then like I didn't want to also change like too much of the style or the rhythm of that book because I wanted it to match as much as possible. So just working as closely as possible with the author to understand, what they're expecting, and also to make sure that like they're getting the full weight of my suggestions and experience. Again, Ali is a pleasure to work with. They are so smart and they're so savvy, and they were really open to it. And usually, again, like if I am working with a self-pubbed author, either on a new book or a book that has been previously published, we set that expectation as editors beforehand. We let them know, like, hey, like I really want to work with you on this. this is what I'm envisioning. Is that okay with you? Because if it's not, then it might not be the right fit for us as editors or publishers with them. So like by setting that expectation with them, that's, I think, the key to making sure that we have a really robust editorial creative relationship. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. And so this is a book that one of my colleagues, Nate Landman, has acquired and is working on with Emily Hamilton. It's called The Stars Too Fondly. And when he brought it to me as editorial director, it's like, hey, is this right for Voyager? I was like, yes, like, let's go get it. Like right now, I want this on the list. It is so fun. Like, for one thing, we don't do a ton of science fiction. Like we are like a lot of sci-fi and fantasy imprints, we do a lot of fantasy because that's where it seems the market and the readership is at. So when we do get a science fiction book on the list, or even just in our submission queue that like strikes our fancy like this one did, like to me that's kind of special. Immediately I was drawn to this because the voice is just so fun. Like it's the idea of these really smart, you know, kind of college age kids who go on a abandoned, potentially haunted spaceship that hasn't launched. And if I don't know if I'm showing my age, if you ever seen the movie Space Camp, it launches, it goes into space, like, and all of a sudden these people have to learn how to A, be astronauts, and B, you know, figure out how to get home. In addition, like the main character and the main voice really gets into it with the AI on the ship. The AI is mimicking the captain that was supposed to be the captain of the crew of this ship that disappeared. So the AI has a lot of the personality traits, but also doesn't realize that, you know, her real personality is disappeared or dead or whatever. And it also thinks of themselves as the captain of the ship and not just like the AI that's supposed to be helping the humans. So first of all, they have to rely on the AI a lot, but then they also like kind of butt heads with the AI because it's like, hey, we're the humans, you're the computer. And the amazing thing is, you know, sparks start to fly. The connection starts to get real, and you start to get some of that kind of like Becky Chambers-esque like questions of what does it mean to be human? Like, what does it mean to be in a relationship? Does it matter when there are so many differences, but there's also enough connectivity and commonality? There's a beautiful standalone novel. It's fun. It's funny. It's romantic. In I think like kind of more the capital R sense of the word. I really feel like too, like if you're not like a big sci-fi person, but you do like books that are a little bit cozy, a little bit about relationships, again, like this is why I feel like it does fit in so well with our list because of that, like the vibes it's giving off that do remind me of Becky Chambers, of oh, I'm forgetting her first name, but Aoki, I think it's like Ria Aoki. I'll have to look it up. There's a fish on the cover. It's really good. It's a tour book. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about other people's books, but but like it just feels like it's in that space. It even has a little bit of that like TJ Klune, you know, again, that hope punk vibe that I think is really special, and really makes these types of books pop a little bit more, as opposed to say like a military sci-fi, which is I think very grounded in a particular audience. I think this can have that potential to be read by a broader readership.
I love that. And David, you can talk about anything. I mean,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, we're talking about books.
no, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. We're here to
Yes.
help. And this is, I know we have a few more titles to discuss. And this is so great. We love having you on. You can come back every day of the week because it's great. It's just great to listen to you talk about these books. Before you get to the next, I think you have just a couple more left, but in the chat, which you may or may not see because we're sort of looking at the comments and the questions. And there is a question from Vicky Nesting who is one of our all-time favorite people. And we may have answered the question, Vicky, and if we haven't, or anybody else who's watching, the question is, how do we get more pre-pub info about these Voyager books? I, Vicky, had just stumbled across the Weaver's books, but hadn't heard anything about them before I quote unquote found them on Edelweiss and NetGalley. So Grace and Lainey have been putting little catalogs into the chat room, but in addition to that, is there anything that we can that you want to say about that? And if not, that's fine, because that's really marketing, and we can certainly, in addition to what's already been put in here, we can get I'm sure Voyager has a newsletter, but just
we do have a newsletter. We also are on social media. It's usually Harper Voyager US, because our list is actually slightly different from the UK's list. So you should follow them as well, because they have some great stuff. But like on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, we are there, and we are constantly talking about new books, like talking about any kind of like Goodreads giveaways, or like, hey, galleys are available, that type of thing. So but yeah, the newsletter, I can see if I can find a link.
I found it. I put it in the Facebook chat. So.
But yes, but I think those are your best bets. And then, like, obviously, if you do get galleys, on the back they'll list who the marketers are or whatever. And if you have any other questions or want to be like asked to be like whitelisted or whatever, like that's who you could reach out to.
And on Harper Voyager's Instagram page, they've already, announcing the Harper Voyager 2024 winter releases, the summer 2024 author showcase. So there's plenty of information there. So Grace, Lainey, I know them. They've already put this stuff into, I don't even have to look to know that they've put it in there. But just look in the chat, and there will be links to the newsletter, Instagram, and Voyager. So and in addition to what we do and something wonderful like today, I think Vicky, I hope that helps answer that it is helpful to you guys.
I will say, if you're just not to belabor this point, but if you're whitelisted for eGalleys on Edelweiss, that link, which is on our website, you can find it there. It goes to all of our catalogs, but we have that sci-fi one, fantasy and crossover. You can click that, and we just update that as eGalleys come. So if you're a librarian, you can just click it and read. So hopefully that's helpful.
So, and anybody watching, if you're unclear about any of this, just reach out to any of us via email, and we will walk you through it. And you can find our emails at all over the place here. Okay, just wanted to get that addressed. Yeah. And now, thank you, David. I want to go to the next slide.
So I'm excited about all of these. This one is a little bit special to me because I first met Prashant Srivastava during COVID, during a virtual convention called FIACon, which is run by FIA Literary Magazine. And he was in India. I was in my apartment in Brooklyn at the time. And he pitched me this idea of, like, what if, like, there were these gates and they get activated by basically ingesting different spices. And the different spice will take you to a different kingdom, and there's 8 kingdoms all told, but only certain people can do this. They're called carriers, and for them it's incredibly painful. It is, they're kind of considered the lowest of the low, even though realistically they are the most powerful people in the world. But they're usually tasked with, say, taking saffron from one kingdom in exchange for cinnamon in another kingdom. And that's like the means of exchange and currency. And this is about Amir, who wants to get out. He is done. And the problem is he's got a mother and he's got a little brother, and he needs to be able to get them out as well. And there's a spice out there that's called the poison, that if he can get his hands on it, he can give it to his mother, who isn't able to go through the gates, get her out and go to kind of this fabled land where carriers who have escaped are congregating around this charismatic leader. So he's kind of a con man. He's kind of a street rat. He's in way over his head, and then he gets sucked into something way bigger than he ever expected. He also happens to be in love with a princess from a different kingdom, and while their love for each other is like strong throughout, they also have different goals. She's working to do the best she can for her particular kingdom, and he's trying to do what's best for him and his family. This is like really grand, epic quest adventure. It's a standalone. It's a a decent size, and I love the sense of India that Prashanth brings to his world. I love the magic system. It has a little bit of that, Mistborn, ingesting the metals. Now it's spice. It's got a little bit of the Death Gate cycle, which again might be a slightly dated reference, but that was Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman back in like the 90s, which is the type of stuff I grew up on. And just the idea of like each gate brings you to a different world that has different motivations and different aspects and varieties and people, and food plays such a big part. I don't know if any of you are like big like Brian Jake Redwall fans, but like I don't know, every time I read this book I get hungry because like the food they talk about is just it's I'm not going to pardon the pun, but here's a pun. It flavors the book in such a great way. And he worked really hard on it. And I'm really excited for people to be able to dive into this world. And if you're looking for, again, maybe a non-Western fantasy to recommend, if you're looking for a BIPOC author to recommend, then this really, I think, fits that bill to a T, and has that little bit of romance. Like any good fantasy has that sense of adventure, has that coming of age, that all kind of are those classic tropes, but told from this different perspective.
Cool. We have a question in the chat from Linda Payne, kind of like Stargate meets Dune. And any chance of this becoming a series?
There is a chance. It does have a very strong resolution. The only it's funny because obviously Dune has spice, but to them spice is like the hydrogen 3 of their universe. That's their fuel as much as it is kind of their magical catalyst. So I will also say this has a slightly less colonized dichotomy. It's very much about an insular world. But I mean, if you want to compare it to Dune, please, go ahead. I am all for that, and tell everybody. But yeah, no, I think the other thing is it definitely has a sense of humor to it. There's not quite the heaviness and darkness of Dune, which I think helps make Dune work. But in this case, I feel like Amir, his friend and kind of mentor Kareem Bai, they're funny. They're people, they're survivors. They're people who have tried to figure out ways to make it in a very unfair world without having their spirits crushed. And that's what I think makes them likable protagonists. Also, it's great. On the cover, Amir is holding a sword. He has no idea how to use that sword. He's just been given a sword and is pretend he tries, but he only has a few days to kind of get used to it. He's not a warrior. She's smart. He's savvy. And I think that's, a little bit more Aladdin-esque than say Paul Atreides.
We just have so many people saying they're really intrigued by this book and really excited to read it. So just wanted to shout that out.
Great. It's so good. And I love this cover. Speaking of great covers, so this is The Doll Makers. This is another debut by Lynn Buchanan. This is a quirky little book. And I say that in the best possible way. It is essentially a world where there's this ever-present monster that's almost like a storm that's constantly crashing against the cities and the country. And it's called the Shad, and it's kind of like this just unstoppable mass. And the only thing that can stop it are these dolls. Now, some of them look like dolls. Some of them look like, weird, just like crude, like mannequin automatons. But for whatever reason, they're able to fight and push back the Shad and protect the humans. And this is centered around a young girl who, when she was very young, like her family was wiped out in the most devastating Shad attack. And she grew up knowing she wanted to be a doll maker. And there's two types. There's artisan doll makers and there are guard doll makers. And she knows she wants to be a guard doll maker. She knows she wants to fight the Shad with the doll makers. So she works so hard to be the best. And she keeps getting told she's the best. And so by the time she's ready to kind of get her license and be accepted by the guild, she's got quite a bit of an ego. And unfortunately, the types of dolls she makes look like artisan dolls. They're beautiful, they're delicate. And she thinks that they're smarter, so that way they'll work better. The guild disagrees, doesn't license her, and so she decides she's going to basically prove herself by essentially going to a very small village, a remote village, calling the Shad and protecting it with her dolls, which is never a good idea. Like you don't call the monsters in, even if you think you can protect them. Things go very wrong. The doll maker who already lives there is kind of ostracized because she's a little bit of an outcast already herself. And it's basically a story of discovery of self, both for the main character, Cheon, and the other doll maker, Akisa. So on the front cover, you have Sean, and on the back cover, you have Akisa. And it's, I don't know, I like to call this a dark, cozy fantasy in that, like, the stakes are ultimately very contained. Like, while yes, the Shad are, have the chance of like getting out and wreaking havoc on the wider world, because this village is so remote, everything is very contained within like this like relatively small area. And the problems that we're seeing, the conflict we're seeing, are very personal, very internal. They are monsters, so there is a little bit of darkness, a little bit of horror elements to it. But it is a standalone. There's ultimately hope. There is ultimately resolution. There's growth. Like, it's weird too, because like I would say Cheon is not the easiest person to get along with. And yet, ultimately, because of that growth and because like she is thrust into a situation relatively new to her right away, like we do get that introspection a lot sooner than you might think. I think you can feel for her and you can have at least sympathy in the beginning and then empathy towards the end. Another cool thing about this book is there are, I believe, 7 or 8 black and white illustrations, original throughout. So it's just that added, bonus to this story that really illuminate how cool this book and story and world is.
Yeah, I love that like dual cover moment going on. I like wanted to make sure I grabbed the image with both, because I was like, this has to be shown.
Yeah. And we're really gonna try very hard to have not a ton of copy on the back. So like if you do have a copy of this book, you will be able to see this pretty much in full. So like a lot of the stuff like the author bio is going to be on the inside, like, so we're really trying to make it, that you can see as much of that back art as possible.
That is so cool.
And then last but not least, this is one of the last ones this summer. And this is actually not a Voyager book. This is a William Morrow book, but because I am on camera, I'm going to talk about it because I really like it. This is The Melancholy of Untold History by Min-Soo Kong. Min-Soo Kong is an award-nominated short story writer. He's a professor of basically the future and history at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. And this is his first novel. And I think the thing that I love about this is it's told over multiple timelines and multiple perspectives. And it's essentially a creation myth. It is centered around a fictional East Asian country. Min-Soo is Korean, but a lot of this does have some origins in Chinese myth as well. And it's about the power of story and narrative, which I think is something readers are always interested in. In the present, you have this character, the historian. In the past, you have a character, the storyteller. And the fact that they are very similar in kind of personality and trajectory in their own timelines is very telling. The historian's basic theory is that often, history is written by the winners, but sometimes you have to just write history even without knowing the quote unquote facts, because most of the time we don't actually know the facts anyway. So the untold history is often the thing that we most need in order to not repeat our mistakes, to be able to move forward, to be able to understand where we came from. And this has a sense of whimsy. So like you have the storyteller and he's telling a story. So the storyteller is the prisoner of an emperor who's building a city. He's telling a story to basically, the longer he can tell the story, the longer he gets to stay alive. And he's telling the story about these four gods who helped create the world, but like bickered and argued with each other. And then the historian, who's going through his own grief, his wife has passed away. He's struggling with a relationship with a younger colleague, and the guilt there. And I don't know, it's beautiful, it's funny, it's really easy to read. It's not a dense book. I think it's, again, a very kind of commercial read, although it has a little bit of that literary feel. If I was having my druthers, I would be like pointing you like, this is like Anthony Dewar or David Mitchell, like while I think the writing is perhaps a little again, more commercial, like it's a much thinner book. I think this can play very well with readers of those styles of kind of epic timelines, multiple perspectives, stories about the human condition, and stories of story. So I don't know, it's lovely, it's beautiful, and I really hope you all find your way to all of these books, because I think they all have something to offer, both you as readers and to the people coming in looking for new things to read.
That was great. Wow.
Thank you.
That was wonderful, David. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with all of us about these wonderful offerings that are coming out in the next bunch of months. This is really great, and we have I think we have an Edelweiss catalog, right?
We
Lainey?
should.
I can
Grace?
put it again in the chat just so it's
Yeah,
fresh there.
yeah, that would be great. That was wonderful. It really covered such a wide range of readerships based on content. So thank you.
No, thank you all, and yeah, have a good rest of your day and happy reading.
Happy reading. We will, and yeah, thank you so much. And we look forward to doing this again with you, because this is just really wonderful, great fun, and just such a lovely way to sort of, get the word out there about the books. Like we said, people are like, how do we find out more about them? Lainey, Grace, and you have all taken care of that by, all the social media for Harper Voyager, which really I think ticks all those boxes. And these books are great. So thank you, David, so much.
Thank you.
We
All
do have
right.
a question before you
Okay.
jump off.
Yes.
Somebody asked, have you had problems with book censorship lately? I'm guessing specifically with Voyager.
I mean, you might have read some articles about the Hugo Awards, and Babel and R.F. Kuang. That was obviously not something we were super excited to hear about. If you don't know, real short, the last Hugo Awards were held in China, and there was some people among the committee who censored some of the nomination lists. So not just Babel, but a fan writer, a new Jian Wow, and I believe it was a Wow or Zhao. I really don't want to mess that up. But ultimately, Zhao, I'm sorry. Ultimately, like, we don't really encounter that a lot. Usually, I would say the science fiction and fantasy community is one of the most progressive when it comes to this type of thing. Like, I know a lot of you all are on the front lines yourselves, but we don't tend to get a lot of pushback here, at least in the US market that I've seen in my 17 years. And hopefully that continues. But, like, certain states are doing what they're going to do, and hopefully we can find ways to resolve that, and keep the books out there. But I think the nice thing is too is, like, because we're not just a physical format imprint, we do have the digital audio, we do have ebooks. There are ways for and like people can get stuff through Libby or what's the other one? Hoopla, but, like, there are ways for readers to get the book, even if, like, it's not immediately, like, physically available. And I think that helps a lot. And it's a pretty vocal community. So I think, like, we're constantly trying to push back on things like censorship. But I will say too, like, HarperCollins as a company is incredibly dedicated to having as many voices as possible. And they might not be voices you love, like, they can be on all over the political spectrum, but the idea is that we're not, like, editorially, we're not being dictated to from high up about what types of books we're putting out. At the end of the day, like, I need to prove more that I can sell this book rather than, is this book, quote unquote, like, acceptable. So I think having that kind of editorial freedom also allows us to make sure that the types of books that are coming out on our list are the types of books that I want to work on, that I think readers want to read, that, like, my colleagues who contribute to the Voyager list also are able to express themselves, allow authors to express themselves, and so on. So yes, I feel like we're lucky in that regard, but I do think it's also institutional to Voyager and HarperCollins as a whole.
Well put. And yes, the people who are watching right now know well of what you speak of this, the bans and everything that they're doing as librarians to fight the good fight. So last comment here, one of the last, is from Rob Haley, who says, "Come back soon, David." And boy, oh boy, do I echo that. I know that Lainey and Grace and I have been just texting each other saying, how great is this? This has been a wonderful, wonderful hour, just hearing you talk about books and addressing concerns just as the one that was just brought up. So thank you, honestly, for all that you've done and do.
Totally. And yeah, I'm happy to come back. So thank you all, and I will hopefully talk to you soon.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
David. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. If everyone can still stay on for just a couple more minutes, we just want to remind you of some cool things coming up. So again, the writers to watch, but then we're going to the Public Library Association conference. If you're going in Columbus, Ohio in April, we have some things going on. So Lainey, you want to just kind of let them know what we're doing?
Sure. So first, we have this Library Reads Alma joint program that is called Your Evening is Booked. It's after hours, after the show ends, and we're just so excited. We have Hampton Heights, that's our author, and you can see all the other lovely authors down there too. Library Reads was kind enough to supply us with this image, and I'll put the RCP link in there so you can get your name down. It's great for us to know who is planning to come if you're at PLA, because we can get galleys ready. Yes, I feel like that's the magic word, right? Galleys. Come for some printed galleys. But we're really excited about Hampton Heights. That book the cover is so cool. And this, I feel like everyone at work is just raving about this read. So we're very excited to have Dan there. And then next is a mystery panel that is also that is through like the PLA program. So it's going to be at 11:30 on Thursday, April 4th. We don't have the room number for this, but you can still RSVP and that will be sent to you after we know. We're just waiting on a few confirmations, but that's the time and the date. And we have Ace Atkins, so super exciting. And again, lovely lineup of authors. So it's just going to be a really cool couple of days with all of our authors there. And then next, we have a very exciting author coming to speak at the lunch. I don't know, Virginia, if you want to speak about this.
Oh, we're just so jazzed. Ace Atkins is our author. And he and Lainey are been bonding over Mississippi. And so we're super jazzed for that mystery panel. And then we have Rainbow Rowell, who will be speaking at Thursday's luncheon. So more to come on that, but it's going to be a great hour. So if you're all around and you can attend, the information is on the PLA website, and we're really excited about this book. It's her first adult book, and I don't know, since 2014, I think. And so revisiting the two main characters are reconnected after years apart. And so it's great. It's really for her young adult readers who've now grown up to be adults. But there's a little bit there for everybody. So it'll be great to meet her in person. We have interviewed her on Writers to Watch, so you can go back and watch that as well. She'll be speaking at PLA Annual. She will also be speaking to the virtual conference. So if you're not going to the conference, you can, and if you're a PLA member, you can access that interview that was done today by Lady Mays. So more to come on that. We'll have everything up on Library Love Fest and on our Facebook page as well.
Yeah. And we had a really good time. So all the virtual watchers it'll be exciting. And then just last, we want to remind you, hopefully we'll have some good news. Actually, we said we can tell them, right? So Crowdcast, we're very open and honest that we've had some issues with Crowdcast, and we know people who are not on Facebook really rely on Crowdcast. So we've been working really hard with Crowdcast, and they've been great to try to figure it out. And Grace and I in the background, and Virginia's been helping us. We've been testing to make sure we don't lead you astray and you don't know it. But right now we're also on Crowdcast in a secret link because we wanted to make sure, and it's all working. So hopefully we've fixed that, and next Writers to Watch will be on Facebook and Crowdcast. That information will be up soon on our pages. So exciting. You might be added to a new Crowdcast link from what you've had in the past, but we'll move everybody over. So you'll get your notifications. But with that being said, we also want to hear from you about the program in general. So take this survey. It's right here. You can scan it, or we'll put the link in there, and help us continue to make this a great event. And I hope you're excited about Crowdcast coming back, because I am.
I think that's it. Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. We got through everything. That was such a really cool hour with David. And listen, if you have questions, comments, let us know. Anything he talked about that you're not clear on, or anything that we've talked about, a Facebook broadcast, how to find us, how to find writers to watch. Don't forget, we got a good one coming up next month. And yeah, more on PLA, but if you are attending the PLA virtual conference, if you're a PLA member, that's going to be a great opportunity to hear Rainbow Rowell being interviewed by Lainey Mays. And she's a great job interviewing authors. And anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you're going, let us know. Come by and visit us. We'll be there with books and authors and galleys. So until next time, is there anything else we want to say before we say adieu to you and you and you?
So long farewell.
Oh, nice one.
See you soon.
Ibida, ibida, ibida. That's all, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.